Get out! This is my house, you useless parasite! The words, sharp as broken glass, cut through the peaceful desert air. Sierra, my son's wife, stood on the patio. Her face, a mask of designer makeup, was twisted with fury. She lunged forward, shoving me with surprising force. My body, old and frail, stumbled backward. I hit the glass patio door leading to my beloved workshop. The panel shattered with a deafening crash, a violent exclamation point to her rage. The crash was a sound that broke more than just glass. It was the sound of my family, my life's work, shattering around me. I am Helen Thorne, 75 years old and the widow of a man who built this hacienda, this sanctuary, with his own hands. Every brick, every tile, every plant in the garden held a memory of Edward. The workshop, my private space, held his legacy, the classic cars, the tools, the unfinished projects. It was a testament to our life together. Now it was just a crime scene. Just a few hours earlier, the drive from my tiny house to the hacienda had been a peaceful ritual. The sun warmed the desert, the saguaros stood tall against the blue sky, and the silence was a welcome comfort. I was heading to my vacation home, as Kevin, my son, called it. A place I visited every other weekend to work on Edward's projects. He had called me 2 days ago, his voice full of casual indifference. "Mum, we're heading to the hacienda. Just a few days. Don't worry about us." I had worried, of course. My son and his wife Sierra were always a source of worry. Their lives, a carefully curated display of luxury and wellness on social media, were built on credit and pretense. Kevin, a failed real estate agent, was constantly chasing the next big deal. Sierra, a yoga influencer, was obsessed with appearances, from her designer clothes to her perfect, spotless home, which was a rental in Los Angeles. When I turned onto the long, winding driveway, I knew something was wrong. The air, usually so quiet, was filled with the sounds of a party. Loud, thumping music and the shouts of children. My pristine garden, my beautiful sanctuary, was a mess. There were plastic cups scattered on the lawn, pool noodles floating in the infinity pool, and the scent of cheap perfume mixed with cigar smoke hung heavy in the air. My heart sank. This wasn't just a small get-together. This was an invasion. I walked toward the patio, my hand on my chest, a familiar tightness growing there. I saw Sierra first. She was a different person in real life than on her social media posts. The serene smile was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating look I knew all too well. She was yelling into her phone, her voice shrill. "No, Mom, they're not staying. This is our space now. She can go back to her little shack." "Sierra," I said, my voice quiet, trying to make sense of the chaos. "What's going on?" She spun around, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, look who it is. The old parasite. What are you doing here? I told Kevin you're not welcome." My mind raced. "This is my house," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I own this property. I just came to check on it, to see if everything was okay." She scoffed, a cruel laugh that made my blood run cold. "Please. Robert told me we could use this house whenever we wanted. He said we needed the space for the kids. This old thing is just a waste of space when no one uses it." Her words hit me like a physical blow. A waste of space. This house was a monument to my life with Edward. Every beam, every window, every tile, a labor of love. I worked as a seamstress for over 50 years to help pay for this. It was our dream, our legacy. It was our life. My hands, the ones that had once mended clothes for others, were now clenching into fists. The humiliation was a hot, burning feeling in my cheeks. I looked around. My son Kevin was nowhere to be found. Only strangers, Sierra's family, were there. They stared at me with disdain, as if I were a trespasser in my own home. My daughter-in-law, the woman who had promised to love and respect my son, was throwing me out of my own house. All the memories, all the sacrifices, all the love I had poured into this place, it was all forgotten, replaced by arrogance and greed. "I need you to leave," Sierra said, her voice dropping to a low, menacing hiss. "There's no room for you here." And that's when she pushed me, and everything shattered. The glass, my composure, my faith in my family. I knew then that this was no longer a family disagreement. This was a war, and it had just begun. The shock of the broken glass lingered in the air, a metallic tang of dust and danger. I stood motionless for a few seconds, absorbing the pain that was more emotional than physical. My hand instinctively went to my temple, where a small cut from a shard of glass was already beginning to bleed. It was a minor wound, a pathetic souvenir of my son's wife casting me out of my own home. I looked back at the patio. Sierra was gone, probably too busy tending to her social media reputation to worry about the parasite she'd just assaulted. Kevin, my son, finally emerged. He saw the broken glass. He saw me standing there, and he saw the small trickle of blood on my face. He didn't rush to me. He didn't ask if I was hurt. He just stood there, shoulders hunched, the weak man he had become. "Mum," he muttered, his eyes darting nervously toward the house. "You need to leave. Please. You're upsetting Sierra and the kids." My vision narrowed. The audacity of his words drained every drop of maternal forgiveness I had left. "Upsetting them?" I repeated, my voice steady and dangerously low. "Your wife just shoved me through a glass door, Kevin, in the house your father and I built, and you're worried about her feelings." "It was an accident," he mumbled, refusing to meet my eyes. "You startled her. You shouldn't have shown up unannounced." "Unannounced?" I let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "This is my house. I don't need an invitation to be in my own home. I pay the taxes, Kevin. I paid the mortgage. Your wife is hosting a drunken fraternity party in a house that does not belong to her, and she had the gall to call me a parasite." He took a hesitant step towards me, the movement of a frightened child. "Look, I know this looks bad, but we're struggling, Mum. We need the space. We have nowhere to put the kids while we figure things out. Sierra's business is failing and we're underwater on the LA apartment. We just needed a few weeks." "And your solution was to lie, invade, and then physically assault your mother?" I paused, letting the silence hang heavy between us. "Where is the special watch? Your father's Wubawutu chronometer that was on the mantel?" Kevin's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't," I sighed, the realization settling like cold desert sand in my heart. "But I do, and that confirms everything I need to know." I turned my back on him. I didn't want to engage further. There was nothing left to say. Words were useless now. Only actions mattered. I walked with slow, dignified steps to my car, ignoring the strange looks from Sierra's family, who were now gathering on the patio to observe the drama. I drove away from the beautiful hacienda, my sanctuary, that had been turned into a battlefield. I didn't head back toward Los Angeles. Instead, I drove to the outskirts of Palm Springs, where my friend Grace lived. Grace owned a secluded, sprawling property in a quiet area, and I had a tiny house on her land. It was a beautiful, functional little place I had built years ago as a personal carpentry project, complete with a small workshop. It was my quiet escape, and now it was my fortress. Pulling up to the tiny house, the quiet was a stark contrast to the shouting and music I had just left. I parked, climbed out, and locked the car. My first impulse, the one I inherited from Edward, was to fix things immediately. I took a deep breath, went inside, and sat down at the small wooden table I had crafted myself. I poured a glass of water, took a small sip, and pulled out my phone. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was calculated. The way Sierra shoved me, the look in Kevin's eyes, the missing watch, it was all a pattern. I knew I couldn't handle this alone. I needed firepower, legal and emotional. I scrolled through my contacts and found the name I was looking for. Grace. She had been a corporate lawyer before retiring to the desert to raise horses. She would understand the cold, hard logic of betrayal. I needed her clarity, her sharp mind, and her professional connections. I had refused the call for a full-blown war, but that choice was no longer mine to make. Sierra had thrown the first punch, a punch delivered through shattered glass. Now I would respond, not with rage, but with strategy. The tiny house was quiet, but inside, a massive battle was just about to be planned. I was no longer a mother or a grandmother. I was a client, a litigant, and a determined opponent. I didn't waste a minute. Still wearing the same clothes I'd driven in, I sat at the table in my tiny house and called Grace. She picked up on the second ring, her voice calm and steady, like an anchor in a rising storm. Grace, it's Helen. I need your professional brain, not your friend one. I've been thrown out of the hacienda. Literally. I relayed the events quickly and clinically, trying to keep the emotion out of my voice. The shock, the crowd of strangers, Kevin's silence, and the shattering glass. I didn't dwell on the pain. I focused on the facts. The invasion, the immediate demand for me to leave, the missing watch, and the lie about using the house for just a few days. Grace listened in silence. When I finished, the line was quiet for a long moment. "That's attempted battery and criminal trespass, Helen," she said finally, her voice now completely loyally. "And the missing watch is theft. You should have called the police immediately." "I know," I admitted. "But I wanted to talk to you first. If I call the local police in Palm Springs, it becomes a simple domestic dispute, a local nuisance. This is bigger than that. This is my son and his wife trying to steal my life's work. I need a war plan, not a police report." Grace sighed. "You're right. Domestic battery charges are messy, especially with family. We need to go after the motive, the money, and the legal angle. I can't take the case myself. I'm retired, and my license is inactive in the city now, but I know the best. You need David Chen. He's sharp, ruthless, and he specializes in elder financial abuse and property fraud. He's based in Los Angeles, but he handles high-profile cases all over Southern California." She pulled up his contact information immediately. "Call him now, Helen. Tell him I sent you. Tell him it's urgent." Within the hour, I was speaking to David Chen. He had a deep, calming voice that somehow cut through my anxiety. I repeated the story for the third time, noticing how the repetition stripped the emotional sting away, leaving only cold, hard details. He asked precise questions. "Did you have insurance on the glass? What is the title status of the hacienda? Do you have receipts for the renovations? Did you ever sign a power of attorney?" When I mentioned the missing chronometer, he focused on that instantly. "That small detail is powerful, Mrs. Thorne. It transforms this from a messy family eviction into outright theft. Theft often points to financial desperation. Let's hit them where it hurts the most, their wallet and their legal standing." He immediately scheduled a consultation for the next morning. Then he dropped the most important advice. Before you come in, Mrs. Thorne, you need to freeze everything, not just your bank accounts. You need to secure your online presence, change passwords, check for unusual activity. People who try to steal a house often try to steal identities and retirement funds too. They already called you parasite. They see you as an object, not a person. I thanked him and hung up, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. David Chen was the mentor I needed. He was the one who would give me the tools and the strategy for this battle. For the rest of the afternoon, I logged into my accounts. I was meticulous. I was an accountant by necessity, having managed Edward's small estate and my own earnings from sewing for decades. I was the opposite of financially incompetent. I noticed three things almost immediately. First, a large recurring payment had been set up from Kevin's savings account to an unknown clinic in Las Vegas. The description was vague. Consulting fee. Second, I found a recent large request for a notarized copy of Edward's death certificate, something only needed for complex title transfers or estate disputes. Third, and most alarmingly, I discovered that Sierra had attempted to change the beneficiary on Edward's old life insurance policy that was still held under my name, naming herself as a secondary heir. She had been blocked by an authentication firewall I had set up years ago. The request was the final piece of the puzzle. They weren't just using the house for a party. They were actively maneuvering to strip me of everything. The attempted insurance fraud, the mysterious payment to an unknown clinic, the demand for Edward's certificate. It all screamed of a highly illegal, calculated and coordinated plan. They didn't just want the house. They wanted me gone, legally and financially invalidated. The game was far more dangerous than I had initially thought. This confirmed I was doing the right thing. The tiny house, my personal sanctuary, was now the war room. I was ready to proceed. The consultation with David Chen was transformative. His office in Los Angeles was minimalist and quiet, a sanctuary of calm calculation. I laid out the evidence, the photos of the shattered glass, the details of the missing chronometer, Sierra's desperate attempt to change the life insurance beneficiary, and the recurring consulting fee payment to a clinic in Las Vegas. David listened, his expression unwavering. Mrs. Thorne, this moves beyond a civil suit. This has elements of attempted felony fraud and theft. They are not just using your house, they are positioning themselves to take ownership by invalidating your legal competence. They want the $170,000 you saved and the equity from the hacienda. They're trying to declare me mentally unstable, I concluded. Precisely, he confirmed, leaning forward. That Las Vegas payment is almost certainly related to fabricating a medical opinion. They're trying to prove you're unfit to manage your assets. The fact you found the attempted beneficiary change is excellent. It shows malice aforethought. We immediately began filing the paperwork. David didn't bother with a simple eviction notice. We went straight for a temporary restraining order, TRO, based on elder abuse, battery, and attempted fraud. This was a legal sledgehammer that would force them out immediately and prevent them from returning, changing locks, or selling any of Edward's possessions. This was the moment I crossed the threshold. I was no longer hoping for reconciliation. I was initiating the legal offensive. I signed the affidavit, listing the specific damages, the glass replacement, the ruined garden furniture, the theft of the family chronometer valued at nearly $4,500, and the clear emotional distress. David assured me that the TRO would be served the next morning. Now, the next step is crucial, David said, moving to the second phase of our strategy. We need to hit them financially and publicly before they can spin this story. Sierra is an influencer. We can use her weapon against her. He introduced me to his investigator, a young tech-savvy woman named Alexa. Alexa's job was simple: dig into Sierra and Kevin's financial situation and public narrative. I provided access to my home security camera system, which I had disabled remotely before I left, ensuring they wouldn't know I still had access to the footage. Alexa quickly confirmed the depth of Kevin and Sierra's financial distress. Their LA apartment rent was several months past due, they had multiple maxed-out credit cards, and Kevin's real estate license was under review due to several failed, high-risk investments that had cost them over $80,000 in the last year alone. Their luxurious online persona was a complete fabrication. The real breakthrough came a few hours later. Alexa found a private message Sierra had sent to a close friend, bragging about her scheme. The message read, "That old lady is obsessed with her late husband and his ridiculous legacy. I'm going to have Dr. Sanchez sign off that she has severe, debilitating PTSD from Edward's death, making her unfit to manage assets. We get the house, sell that old desert shack, and Kevin can pay off his debts. Easy money, right?" The specific detail, severe PTSD from Edward's death, made my blood run cold. It was a vile and calculated move. They were using my deep, enduring grief for Edward as a weapon to strip me of my rights. It was the ultimate, cruelest betrayal. They didn't just want my money. They wanted to erase my sanity and my love for my husband. I gave Alexa the green light. "Use it," I said, my voice firm. "I want the evidence documented. I want every lie exposed. Sierra wanted a war on social media. She's about to get one, served by a woman she thought was too frail to fight." Leaving David's office, I felt a calm determination. The initial hurt was gone, replaced by a cold fire. I was ready for the confrontation, armed with legal documents and the damning truth of their fraud. I had officially left my old, quiet life behind and entered the battlefield. This was the necessary path to justice. The temporary restraining order, the TRO, was served at 9 a.m. the following morning. I wasn't there, but David Chen's assistant, along with a uniformed process server, handled the confrontation. The hacienda was suddenly silenced. Sierra, in her yoga pants, initially refused the papers, but the threat of immediate police action forced her compliance. She had precisely 4 hours to gather her personal belongings and vacate the premises. The backlash was instant, and it was loud. My phone, which I had kept muted, vibrated constantly. The true battlefield was now online, precisely as David had predicted. Sierra, leveraging her status as a minor wellness influencer, took straight to Instagram stories. She didn't address the court order directly. Instead, she launched a highly curated emotional appeal. "Please, everyone, I'm heartbroken," she sobbed into the camera, the backdrop artfully showing the chaos of packing boxes. "My mentally unstable mother-in-law, a poor, frail woman dealing with severe PTSD from my late father-in-law's death, has been manipulated by greedy lawyers into taking away the only safe haven we had for the children. This is elder abuse. Against me. We were just trying to care for her property, and she throws us out like criminals." She turned the narrative completely upside down. She was the loving caretaker, and I was the volatile, mentally compromised elder. Her followers, mostly other young mothers and wellness enthusiasts, flooded the comments with support, calling me cruel and calculating. Kevin, meanwhile, began contacting our extended family, painting me as a bitter, controlling widow who was obsessed with money. He claimed I was simply trying to punish them because they were happy and successful, unlike me in my sad little desert shack. But David and Alexa were ready. The moment Sierra's video went live, Alexa launched our counter-offensive. We didn't respond directly on Instagram. Instead, Alexa targeted the financial news forums and local Palm Springs real estate groups that Kevin frequented. She posted screenshots of Kevin's public financial filings, which clearly showed his mounting debts the late rent on the LA apartment, and his real estate license review. This immediately undercut his claims of success. Our biggest ally, however, came from an unexpected place: the local woodworkers community. My husband Edward had been a highly respected craftsman, and I, Helen, had maintained his online forum and attended local meetups. When Sierra publicly mocked Edward's ridiculous legacy and the old desert shack, the community rallied. Marcus, a fellow woodworker and former Marine, contacted me through the forum. "Helen, I saw Sierra's post," Marcus wrote. "She is destroying your family's name. You're not unstable. You're one of the sharpest women I know. I want to help. I have connections in local investigative reporting. Let me be your boots on the ground in Palm Springs." Marcus became my informal ally. He was the one who could physically observe what was happening. He drove by the hacienda during the eviction and documented how Sierra, instead of just packing, was actually removing fixtures, attempting to unscrew a high-end chandelier, and throwing Edward's old tools into trash bags, tools valued at over $20,000. He took clear, date-stamped photos and videos, providing us with irrefutable evidence of further criminal damage and theft occurring during the eviction window. Armed with Marcus's evidence, David immediately filed an emergency motion demanding the immediate return of all tools and household fixtures. The legal pressure on Kevin and Sierra intensified. They were now facing not just the initial TRO, but also potential criminal charges for grand theft and contempt of court. Sierra, cornered, made a desperate move. She released a carefully edited, highly emotional interview, claiming that I had been abusing her and Kevin financially for years, constantly reminding them of my sacrifices. She claimed the hacienda was the only way to break free from my controlling power. The core theme of their defense was now clear. I was not incompetent, but I was toxic, and they were the victims trying to escape my financial tyranny. This lie, preying on the common anxiety people have about controlling parents, was their most sophisticated and dangerous tactic yet. It was a vicious attack on my character, designed to turn public sympathy and the judge against me. The pressure was immense, but it only solidified my resolve. They had underestimated my resilience and my ability to fight fire with cold, legal steel. I was now ready to move in for the definitive proof of their deep betrayal. With the legal and public battles underway, David Chen decided it was time to make a move on the ground. We needed to recover some physical evidence that Sierra and Kevin might have overlooked. There was one place they wouldn't think to look: the workshop. Specifically, the classic cars. The hacienda was empty now, a silent ghost of its former self. David and I arrived with Marcus, my trusted ally from the woodworking community. The police officer from the TRO was a few minutes behind us. Marcus brought his tools. He was there to help me with a pre-planned task. We were looking for a specific item, something Edward had told me about long ago, a secret compartment in his favorite car, a vintage '67 Mustang. "They've done a lot of damage," Marcus said, his voice low and full of a quiet anger as we entered the workshop. Tools were scattered everywhere. Some of Edward's delicate woodworking chisels were broken, and there were greasy handprints all over his workbench. They were trying to take all the tools. My report stopped them. I nodded, my eyes focused on the Mustang. It was a beautiful car, a labor of love that Edward had been restoring for 20 years. He always said it was the heart of the workshop, a repository of his dreams. "The key is in the driver's side sun visor," I told Marcus, my voice trembling with a mix of sadness and determination. He told me if anything ever happened to him, I'd find something important in there. Marcus reached up and pulled down the visor. A small key, a single, unassuming piece of metal, was taped to the back. It didn't look like any car key I'd ever seen. It was too small, too delicate. What is it for, Helen? David asked, his lawyer's mind already running through potential scenarios. The secret compartment, I said. He told me he had a secret compartment in the car. It was his last little joke, his last little gift to me. He said he would show it to me after the car was done, that it would only open with this key. We moved to the trunk. I told Marcus where to look. A small panel under the trunk lining that looked like part of the car's bodywork. He used a special tool to pry it open, and there it was. A small metal box, locked with a simple padlock. I used the key from the sun visor to open it. Inside, there was a stack of papers and a small, unassuming USB drive. David's eyes widened. This is it, Helen. This could be our final nail in their coffin. The papers were a meticulously detailed financial log of every cent Edward and I had spent on the hacienda. Every receipt, every bank statement, every loan payment, all carefully documented. But the most valuable item was the USB drive. I put it into my laptop, and a single video file appeared. I clicked on it. The image on the screen was Edward. He was sitting in the same workshop, the Mustang behind him. He looked thin, but his eyes, those kind, intelligent eyes, were as sharp as ever. He was speaking into a camera. It was a video he had recorded just a few days before he died. "Hello, my love," he said, and my heart broke and mended all at once. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. I have to admit, my darling, I'm worried about you. I'm worried about Kevin. He's a good boy, but he's easily influenced. He has a lot of his mother's kindness, but not her strength. Sierra, I don't trust her. She has a hungry heart. She's not a bad person. She's just lost. I fear she will try to manipulate Kevin. I fear she will try to convince him to take what's rightfully yours. I've seen her talking to lawyers, getting documents. I'm not a fool, my love." He paused, a look of deep, abiding love on his face. "I want you to know, Helen, that you are the most competent, most intelligent woman I have ever known. You are not frail. You are not weak. You are the rock. I'm leaving this video here so that you have a little ammunition. I want the world to know you are mentally sound, that you are the owner of our hacienda. I also want you to know how much I love you, how proud I am of you. You are more than a mother, more than a wife, more than a widow. You are a survivor. I hope you will use our story to help others. This is the last gift I have for you. I will always be with you." The video ended. I was in a daze, but David and Marcus were already a step ahead. "Helen," David said, his voice full of awe, "this is priceless. A video from a beloved deceased husband, a declaration of your sanity, a direct accusation of her and Kevin's malicious intent. This isn't just evidence. This is a story. This is going to destroy them." I didn't feel joy, only a profound, deep sadness for Edward's foresight, and the knowledge that he was right. My son had fallen for the trap Edward had so carefully predicted. It was now time to use this last gift to do what he wanted me to do, not only to win, but to stand as a symbol of strength. The emergency hearing was set for the following Tuesday in the Palm Springs courtroom. This was the ordeal, the ultimate confrontations, where Sierra and Kevin would present their fabricated case of my mental incompetence, and I would deploy Edward's final message. The courtroom was packed, not with media, but with local real estate agents, members of Edward's woodworking club, and most importantly, family. Sierra had leveraged her online presence, ensuring some of her minor influencer friends were there, ready to document my public breakdown. She sat at the defense table, next to a slick, expensive lawyer named Mr. Vance, looking composed and victimized. Kevin sat beside her, pale and avoiding my gaze. Mr. Vance opened, painting a picture of me as a tragic figure. "The court must consider the painful reality," he announced, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Mrs. Helen Thorne, after the sudden death of her beloved husband, has developed severe, debilitating post-traumatic stress disorder, which has manifested as extreme paranoia and financial controlling behavior. She has accused her loving son of attempted fraud based on delusions and grief." He then called a witness, a woman named Dr. Sheila Sanchez, the person connected to the mysterious Las Vegas consulting fee. Dr. Sanchez was not a psychiatrist, but a life coach specializing in grief counseling, who had clearly been paid to pose as an expert. She produced a lengthy, official-looking document. "Based on my remote consultation and extensive review of Mrs. Thorne's online activity," Dr. Sanchez testified, "it is my professional opinion that Mrs. Thorne is experiencing recurrent, debilitating psychological distress tied to her husband's legacy. This fixation on the hacienda and his missing chronometer is a classic sign of emotional regression and an inability to process current realities. She is, simply put, mentally incapable of making sound financial decisions regarding a $4.2 million estate." Sierra then took the stand. She was a master performer. She wept, she pleaded, she looked directly at the judge with wide, sorrowful eyes. "Your Honor, we just wanted to protect her," Sierra cried. "She was becoming hostile and unpredictable. We were trying to manage the hacienda responsibly so she wouldn't lose it all. She even attacked me when I tried to offer comfort. She shoved me." It was a brilliant lie, turning the table completely. The courtroom murmured. I saw the doubt in the judge's eyes. This was the moment of ultimate danger. I felt the sharp sting of Sierra's public humiliation attempt. David Chen rose slowly for the cross-examination. He didn't attack Sierra's character immediately. He attacked the document. "Dr. Sanchez," David asked, his voice calm but authoritative, "when exactly did you physically examine Mrs. Thorne?" "I did not," the doctor stated confidently. "My consultation was remote, based on family testimony and secondary data." "Ah, so you are testifying to severe PTSD and cognitive decline without ever meeting the patient," David pressed. "And you charged $8,000 for this remote diagnosis, correct?" "That is my standard rate for specialized grief consultation," she sputtered, suddenly less composed. David then delivered the first legal blow, producing a notarized document. The court should be aware that Dr. Sanchez's professional license in California was suspended 2 years ago for falsifying credentials. She is not licensed to provide a diagnosis in this state, and her testimony should be stricken. The judge's gavel hit the block. Dr. Sanchez was dismissed. The courtroom atmosphere shifted dramatically, but the judge was still focused on my supposed emotional fragility. "Mr. Chen," the judge said sternly, "you have presented evidence of fraud, but the defense has raised serious questions about the plaintiff's emotional stability. Can you unequivocally prove that Mrs. Thorne possesses the mental acuity to manage a complex estate?" "Your Honor, I can," David said, turning to me. "Mrs. Thorne, please approach the screen." This was the climax. I walked to the courtroom's main display, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. David plugged in the USB drive. "This is a video recording made by Mrs. Thorne's late husband, Edward Thorne, just days before his death. It serves as a final testamentary declaration of his wife's competence and, tragically, a prediction of the actions taken by the defendants." As Edward's face filled the screen, a collective gasp swept the room. Sierra's jaw dropped, her tears instantly drying. Kevin slumped in his chair, his head in his hands. Edward spoke his truth, his love, his confidence in my rock-like stability, and his deep-seated distrust of Sierra's hungry heart. The video was irrefutable. It was the absolute, ultimate contradiction of their entire case. When the video concluded, a profound silence fell over the court. The air had been sucked out of Sierra's malicious narrative. I looked at Kevin, searching for any connection. He only stared at the empty screen, witnessing his father's final, damning truth. I had won the emotional battle, and now the legal victory was inevitable. The moment Edward's video finished playing, the courtroom erupted. The judge, a formidable woman named Justice Albright, pounded her gavel 3 times, restoring a fragile order. She addressed Mr. Vance, Sierra's lawyer, her voice laced with visible displeasure. "Mr. Vance, your entire defense rests on the premise of Mrs. Thorne's mental instability. This video, authenticated by the plaintiff's counsel, unequivocally contradicts your claims, offering direct, testamentary evidence of her competence and, frankly, the malicious intent of your clients." Mr. Vance attempted a desperate salvage. "Your Honor, the video is self-serving and entirely circumstantial. It does not negate the medical evidence of her PTSD, which renders her emotionally volatile." David Chen was immediately on his feet. "Your Honor, we have already proven that Dr. Sanchez is operating with a suspended license and that her consultation fee was an $8,000 bribe, constituting attempted fraud. Furthermore, the video proves not volatility, but foresight. Mrs. Thorne's late husband feared this exact predatory action. The emotional distress comes not from grief, but from the calculated betrayal by her own son and daughter-in-law." Justice Albright listened, her expression transitioning from sternness to decisive resolve. She turned her attention to Kevin, who sat shivering next to a now silent Sierra. "Mr. Thorne," the judge addressed him directly, "did you know your wife was paying a non-licensed practitioner to falsify a diagnosis of your mother's mental health?" Kevin stammered, his defense collapsing around him. "Your Honor, I knew about the consultation fee, but I didn't know the extent of the diagnosis. Sierra said it was for our children's future." "The children's future?" Justice Albright repeated, her tone cold. "A future built on a lie and attempted theft of a senior citizen's life savings. That is not a future, Mr. Thorne. That is a crime." She paused, then delivered the ruling, which was swift and absolute. "The court finds that the defendants, Sierra and Kevin Thorne, engaged in egregious, premeditated acts of elder abuse and attempted felony financial fraud. The temporary restraining order is immediately converted to a permanent injunction. The hacienda and all its assets, including the classic car collection and the workshop tools, are confirmed 100% as the sole property of Mrs. Helen Thorne." She added a punitive measure that caused Sierra to finally break her composure. "The defendants are ordered to pay all of Mrs. Thorne's legal fees, including the consultation with Mr. Chen and all punitive damages related to the physical assault and destruction of property. This amount, totaling $35,000, must be paid within 30 days, or contempt charges will be filed." The gavel slammed down one last time, a final, thunderous statement of justice. The courtroom immediately became a chaotic mix of congratulations and silent accusations. Sierra erupted in shrieks, accusing Kevin of incompetence and her lawyer of failure. She shoved past him, storming toward the exit, her influencer facade completely shattered. She didn't spare me a glance. Kevin remained seated, frozen in a state of utter defeat. He finally looked at me, his eyes red and full of a shame that seemed to weigh him down physically. "Mom," he whispered, his voice broken. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know she would go this far." "You knew enough, Kevin," I replied, standing tall with David Chen beside me. "You knew you left me on the patio with broken glass. You knew I was hurt, and you chose to walk away and lie to save your wife's pride. You made your choice." I didn't offer him forgiveness or comfort. I offered him truth. He had to live with the consequences. David placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Helen, you did it. You not only won the house, you completely cleared your name and established their criminal intent. This is more than a win. This is a complete legal restoration of your dignity. My reward wasn't the legal document or the promise of $35,000 in damages. It was the feeling of profound, unshakable peace. The shame I had felt when Sierra called me a parasite was gone. In its place was the powerful, quiet certainty that Edward's final message had achieved its purpose. He had protected me, and now I was free to protect his legacy, and more importantly, myself. As I walked out of the courtroom, Marcus, my loyal ally, was waiting. He smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. Welcome back, Helen. The hacienda is waiting for its rightful owner. The sunlight outside felt warmer, the air cleaner. The battle was won. Now the long, quiet process of reclaiming my home and rebuilding my life could finally begin. The physical house was mine, but the true prize was the unassailable proof of my sanity and strength. The court ruling felt less like a victory and more like a necessary amputation. It was clean, decisive, and final. But recovery is never immediate. My reward was the legal ownership of the hacienda, but the road back was paved with the physical and emotional residue of the invasion. I returned to Palm Springs that evening, not to the tiny house, but straight to the hacienda. David Chen arranged for a uniformed security guard to be stationed at the gate for the first week, ensuring no attempts at retaliation or further theft. Walking through the front door felt strange. The house was vacant, but not empty. It was hollowed out, stripped of its spirit. The air still carried the faint, sickly sweet scent of cheap synthetic cologne and stale beer, a ghost of the chaos they had inflicted. My beautiful living room, with its elegant Spanish tiles, was scarred by sticky rings where glasses had been placed directly on the wooden tables. My custom-made linen sofa had a permanent, ugly, dark stain, red wine or something worse. The meticulously restored antique light fixtures had been replaced by cheap, temporary LED bulbs they'd installed themselves, leaving wires exposed. The kitchen was the worst. The high-end, commercial-grade stove I had installed for Edward, who loved to cook, was covered in a thick, baked-on layer of grease. My copper pots, which I had polished diligently, were scratched and blackened. A significant amount of silverware was simply missing. It was clear they hadn't cared for the house. They had abused it, seeing it as nothing more than a free, disposable party venue. The workshop, however, was where the real damage was done. The shattered glass from the patio door had been swept up in a haphazard fashion, but tiny shards still glittered across the concrete floor. The beautiful workbenches, Edward's domain, were covered in cigarette burns and ring marks from power tools used improperly. Worst of all, they had taken several irreplaceable power tools that Edward had passed down from his own father. These weren't just tools. They were family artifacts, now lost. I walked slowly, cataloguing the destruction, not with fury, but with a chilling, detached sense of loss. It was like viewing the archaeological remains of a betrayal. I grabbed my phone and began taking detailed photos and notes for the insurance claim and the ongoing punitive damages phase of the lawsuit. This wasn't about the money. It was about the documentation of their total disregard for my property and Edward's memory. I decided my immediate priority wasn't to clean, but to erase. The energy of the invasion had to be exorcised. I spent $10,500 on an intensive professional restoration crew, a deep cleaning service, a specialized crew for the tile and stone, and a contractor to assess the electrical damage and replace the custom glass panel. I demanded they use only unscented, high-quality cleaning products. The goal was to remove every physical trace of Sierra and Kevin. While the crews worked over the next few days, scrubbing and repairing, I retreated to the tiny house. I couldn't bear to stay at the hacienda while the process was ongoing. I sat alone, not crying, but processing the invisible damage. The shame of being called a parasite, the violation of Edward's memory, the sheer malice of the PTSD diagnosis. These were the scars the cleaning crew couldn't touch. I realized I couldn't live here alone anymore. The house was too large, and now it was tainted. I needed to fundamentally change my relationship with the hacienda. It couldn't just be my retreat. It had to become something else, something bigger than the betrayal. I called Marcus. "Marcus, I want to sell the classic cars," I told him. "Except for the Mustang. That stays. I want to use the money from the others to set up a foundation to fight elder abuse." Marcus was surprised but supportive. "Helen, those cars are worth a lot. Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I confirmed. "They are Edward's legacy, and he wanted me to use my story to help others. That video wasn't just for the judge. It was for me. I need to turn this bitterness into something productive. The money is power, and I'm going to use it to protect other people's grandmothers." This decision, made in the quiet solitude of the tiny house, was the beginning of my true healing. The hacienda, once a sanctuary for one, would now become the launch pad for a movement. I was taking the pain, the betrayal, and the financial assets they tried to steal, and forging them into a weapon for social justice. I was ready to build my own legacy. The legal victory had provided closure, but the financial battle was far from over. Kevin and Sierra owed me $35,000 in punitive damages and legal fees, a sum they were clearly incapable of paying quickly. Instead of waiting for David Chen to pursue endless garnishments and collections, I decided to focus on my own proactive plan, the resurrection of my identity and the creation of a new legacy. My first act was to turn Edward's passion into my philanthropic power. Marcus, true to his word, helped me arrange the sale of the classic cars, keeping only the Mustang. The three sold vehicles, a vintage '72 Corvette, a '65 Thunderbird, and a beautifully restored '58 Chevy pickup, fetched a combined price of $95,000. This was the seed money for my foundation. I named it the Edward Thorne Dignity Fund, dedicated to providing legal aid and financial counseling to seniors facing family-related financial abuse. This was my strategic revenge, turning the assets they coveted into a movement that would specifically target people like them. I then took my story public. I collaborated with Marcus, who had experience with local media, and Alexa, who handled the digital narrative. We launched a simple YouTube channel and a corresponding website called Don't Underestimate the Elders. My first video was powerful and stark. It was filmed inside the repaired hacienda, in front of the new glass panel. I didn't cry or scream. I simply stated the facts, reading excerpts from Justice Albright's ruling and then playing the full video of Edward's final, devastating message. "They called me a parasite," I said into the camera, my voice low and controlled. "They tried to use my love for my late husband, my grief, as a weapon to declare me mentally unfit. They failed. But how many other elders are failing in silence? How many other people's children are using the complexity of the legal system to steal their parents' retirement?" The video went viral within 48 hours. The story, the wealthy, respected husband predicting his wife's betrayal by his own son, the courtroom drama, the PTSD lie, was irresistible. Sierra and Kevin's names, once whispered in court, were now screamed across social media platforms. The socialization of the revenge was swift and brutal. Sierra's entire influencer career collapsed overnight. Major sponsors, a skincare line, a boutique yoga studio, a lifestyle magazine, dropped her like a hot stone. Her comment sections became a cesspool of condemnation. Her carefully curated image of the loving, successful family woman was utterly annihilated. Kevin, who worked remotely for a national real estate firm, faced an internal ethics investigation. His colleagues, seeing his name tied to elder fraud and abuse in the news, distanced themselves completely. Within a week, he was forced to resign. The dominoes continued to fall. The financial strain, exacerbated by the $35,000 judgment they couldn't afford, destroyed their marriage. Kevin filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, though everyone knew the difference was the complete financial ruin caused by Sierra's reckless ambition. I watched all this unfold from the quiet serenity of my hacienda. I felt no joy in their suffering, only a chilling sense of symmetry. They had tried to destroy my life for money, and in the end, money was the instrument of their own destruction. However, the deepest, most subtle part of this chapter involved my own son. Kevin called me, not to apologize, but to beg for a loan to cover the judgment and his mounting legal fees for the divorce. "Mom, please," he pleaded over the phone. "They're taking everything. I lost my job. I'm going to be homeless. Just help me with the $35,000 and I'll pay it back." "Kevin," I responded, my voice devoid of emotion, "you declared me mentally incompetent for money. You stood by while your wife shoved me into broken glass. Your father left a message predicting exactly this. You made your choice, and now you must own the consequences." "But I'm your son. You can't just abandon me," he cried. "I didn't abandon you, Kevin. I liberated you. You wanted to be financially independent, free from my controlling power, remember? Now you have it. You have full independence, and you must solve your problems without your mother's money." I hung up, placing the phone gently on the table. It was the hardest thing I had ever done as a mother, but I knew Edward would have approved. I had not only protected my property, but I had protected my dignity by refusing to enable their toxic cycle of greed and dependence. My resurrection was complete. I was no longer a victim. I was a protector and a force for change. A year passed, marked by the rising success of the Edward Thorne Dignity Fund and the steady growth of my Don't Underestimate the Elders YouTube channel. The money from the car sales, combined with donations sparked by the publicity of my case, had allowed us to hire 2 part-time legal aid assistants. I had found my purpose. The return with the elixir. My elixir wasn't just a legal victory, it was the ability to fight for others. The hacienda had become a symbol of resilience. It was repaired, clean, and felt more like mine than ever before. I spent my days recording video segments in the workshop, using Edward's meticulously organized tools as my backdrop. I taught viewers how to secure their deeds, recognize signs of financial manipulation, and most importantly, how to talk to a lawyer. The public reaction was overwhelming. Hundreds of people contacted me sharing similar stories. I was no longer Helen Thorne, the widow. I was Helen Thorne, the elder defender. One quiet Tuesday afternoon, I received a small handwritten letter. It wasn't from Kevin or Sierra, it was from Isabel, my 11-year-old granddaughter. I hadn't seen her since the eviction. The permanent injunction meant neither Kevin nor Sierra could step foot on the property, and they had understandably cut off contact. The note was simple, written in slightly messy cursive. "Grandma Helen, I miss your cookies. I know you're famous now. My mum and dad aren't doing good. Can I see the Mustang?" The letter hit me hard. Isabel was the innocent party, the only one I had truly grieved losing contact with. She was the one reason Edward and I had hoped Kevin would find stability. I immediately called David Chen. Isabel wants to visit, I explained. I know the injunction is in place, but she is a minor. David worked quickly. He contacted Kevin's divorce lawyer and negotiated supervised visitation rights. The condition was stringent. Kevin had to drop Isabel off at a neutral location near the hacienda, and I had to agree not to discuss the lawsuit, the divorce, or Sierra. I agreed instantly. My need to reconnect with her outweighed any desire for vindication. The next Saturday, Isabel arrived, accompanied by a social worker. I met them at the neutral meeting point and drove Isabel back to the hacienda. The moment we pulled into the driveway, she gasped. "Grandma, it's so beautiful again," she exclaimed. "Mom said you let it get all messy. She said the glass was broken because you threw a vase." I smiled gently. I knew the rules, no talking about the lawsuit. But I could talk about the truth. "The glass was broken, yes," I said, leading her to the workshop. "But we fixed it. And we fixed the garden, too. Your grandpa Edward built this house to be strong, Isabel. Houses and people can break, but we can always fix ourselves." We spent the afternoon in the workshop. I showed her the Mustang, still pristine. Then I showed her Edward's workbench. I let her handle a small, perfectly carved wooden bird that Edward had been working on when he died. "I know my mum and dad are having problems," Isabel said quietly, sanding the bird with a piece of fine grit paper. "They always fight about money, and Mum says you're cruel." This was the core of my return with the elixir. I had to provide the truth without violating the legal agreement. "Sometimes, Isabel," I replied, sitting beside her. "When adults make very big mistakes, they have to face consequences. Consequences can feel cruel, especially if those adults don't want to accept responsibility. Your father and your mother made choices that hurt me and hurt themselves. I chose to defend my property and my honor. Was that cruel, or was it justice?" Isabel paused her sanding, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's like when I sneak a cookie before dinner and Dad takes away my tablet. I get mad at him for taking the tablet, but it's really my fault for taking the cookie." I reached out and squeezed her shoulder. "Exactly like that, dear. Exactly like that. You broke a rule, and there was a consequence. But that doesn't mean I stop loving you, or that your dad stops loving you. It means we all have to learn from the consequences." That small conversations was the most profound validation of my fight. She understood the simple morality that her parents had lost. My story, my fight, and my elixir had finally reached the one person who mattered most. Isabel's visits became a regular ritual. She was the healing factor in my quiet solitude. Her presence slowly chipped away at the wall of bitterness I had built around my heart. I hadn't forgiven Kevin or Sierra, but in teaching Isabel about honor, work, and responsibility, I was finally finding a path to self-forgiveness for the mistakes I had made as a mother and for the anger I had held onto for so long. The hacienda was restored, and now so was a piece of my family. 2 years had passed since the emergency hearing. The hacienda no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a home, strong and renewed. The Edward Thorne Dignity Fund was thriving, becoming a recognized force in elder protection across California. I spent less time with the lawyers and more time in the sun, gardening, and recording my weekly videos. One crisp autumn morning, I was in the workshop, showing Isabel how to use Edward's old lathe. She was 14 now, quiet and thoughtful, growing into a beautiful young woman who understood the meaning of work and respect. Suddenly, a hesitant knock came from the repaired patio door. I froze. Only Isabel and Marcus were supposed to have the code. I walked to the door, my heart pounding a rhythm I hadn't felt since the trial. Standing on the patio was Kevin. Alone. He looked years older than the last time I had seen him. He wore worn clothes, his hair was thinning, and he looked truly defeated. Sierra had long since moved to Florida, attempting to relaunch her career under a new name, still carrying the debt and the criminal record. Kevin was working as an Uber driver, slowly paying off the punitive damages. "Mum," he said, his voice flat, "Isabel told me you were here. I needed to see you." I looked at him, not with anger, but with a weary neutrality. "The injunction is still in place, Kevin. You know you can't be on the property." "I know," he conceded, stepping back slightly, placing himself just on the outside of the wrought iron fence. "I'm not here for the house or the money. I finally paid off the last of the $35,000 judgment 2 weeks ago. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand. I didn't just betray you. I betrayed Dad. That video, it broke me. I was weak, and I let my greed and my fear destroy everything." His shoulders shook. He wasn't the selfish boy anymore. He was a broken man, finally facing his consequences. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he continued, tears finally coming. "I don't deserve the hacienda, or your cookies, or anything. I just needed you to know I'm sorry, genuinely sorry. I was the fool who tried to declare the sharpest, most competent woman I know mentally ill. I'm building a new life, Mum. A real one. I'm doing it without Sierra, and without your money." Isabel emerged from the workshop, seeing her father crying at the fence. The child in me wanted to rush to him, to hug him, to erase his pain. But the survivor in me knew that forgiveness required a bridge, and he had to be the one to build the foundation. "Thank you for saying that, Kevin," I replied softly. "It takes a lot of strength to admit your mistakes. That strength is all I ever wanted you to have." I opened the gate, just a crack. "Isabel is here. She needs her father. And I need to know she has a father who has learned his lesson." He stepped through the gate, and the reunion was quiet and awkward, but it was real. He hugged Isabel tightly, holding her like she was the last piece of light in his world. The ultimate closure wasn't an instant forgiveness. It was the healing, human process of recognizing that the consequences had worked. Justice had been served, the betrayal was acknowledged, and now there was hope for reconstruction. Kevin had not returned to the easy life, but to the hard, honest path, and that was a victory greater than any court ruling. I watched them together, feeling a deep sense of peace that had nothing to do with money or property. The hacienda, my fortress built with love and defended with courage, had truly become a sanctuary. It wasn't just a symbol of my strength, it was a testament to the fact that you can rebuild trust, one difficult conversation at a time. The little old lady they called a parasite had become the foundation for her family's recovery. My journey from betrayal to resilience is now complete. But the fight to protect elders never ends. If this story resonated with you, if you've faced similar challenges, or if you simply believe in the power of justice and dignity, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what is the most important lesson you learned from watching this story unfold? Your experiences fuel the Edward Thorne Dignity Fund and help us fight the good fight every single day. Don't forget to subscribe to Don't Underestimate the Elders